And now over to Cookie for questions.
Okay, we are going to do questions. The only thing that we ask is that they are questions and they are not editorial comments, and we appreciate everybody's cooperation on that. And I hope you forgive me because I can't see really well from here, so go ahead, I don't know you.
Hi, I'm Joni Hunt. My question is, with the governor being more, well, not the governor, actually, it's Cuccinelli, who's attorney general.
That'll help.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is much better. Hi, yes, with our yes, the Attorney General has filed that he doesn't think that this new health care reform is going to be legal. And how I hear a lot of you speaking with regards to health care reform and how it's going to affect our state. Now, how is this going to work together?
And I probably Patrick's the best person, but I can just say this: it's the law of the land, and so Virginia, I know, has to move forward on and putting the apparatus in place to implement health care reform. And until it's overturned, it is the law of the land, and so Virginia has to ready itself. And I expect that it will go to the Supreme Court, and then whatever decision is made will go from there. But I mean, that's just the reality: is that it is the law, and that we have to prepare ourselves.
Yeah, let me just add to that, to the governor's credit and the Secretary of Health and Human Resources credit, that they see this as there's a lot of things that they have to implement between now and that day when it actually does go before the Supreme Court. But I would say that the Attorney General is really comparing apples and oranges when he talks about the healthcare market and the auto industry market. I mean, he really doesn't understand healthcare. When someone makes $30,000 a year and has no health insurance and they have a heart attack, they go to the hospital for about 2 weeks. They go back out and have 2 weeks of another rehab. They get a bill for about $250,000. Who do you think pays for that? Everyone who has health insurance in the private market pays for that. And so comparing it to the auto insurance, if I have a car accident and I have insurance, my insurance pays for it. But if you have a car accident and you don't have insurance, who do you think pays for your car to be fixed? Nobody. So he clearly doesn't understand the health insurance market, and I think that will come out as we progressively get further and further. I'll tell you this, though, a little statistic that you ought to know about healthcare is that everybody who buys private insurance, whether it's an employer or whether it's an individual, is on average about $1,000 a year inflated because of uncompensated care. So don't tell me that someone who doesn't have health insurance is not impacting the market. They definitely are, because they're impacting employers. Employers have a hard time purchasing health insurance. And think about a business that employs 100 people. That is an enormous amount of money, a burden that they have to pay. An individual, think of what you would do with $1,000 that if you didn't have to pay because of this kind of market. So I think people ought to be outraged more that people that choose not to buy health insurance, the rest of us have to pay for it. And I wish the Attorney General would focus more on issues that actually matter to people of the Commonwealth and things that won't be disruptive. But that will come out, and I expect by 2014 the people who oppose it will be in a position where they regret that.
I'll address that too. There are, but I think 23 or more states that actually have contested it. So regardless of what Virginia did on the legal front, that will probably end up in the court. But as Patrick mentioned, the governor set up the commission in large part not to both deal with the realities of whatever is going to happen there, but also look at general reforms that we could put in place just that are necessary, for small businesses, for just how we deliver services. Apart from whether the bill is constitutional or not, there are reforms that we can put in place and be prepared to put in place. And obviously Secretary Hazel, who does hail from Northern Virginia, I think is particularly sensitive to the diversity of the communities and what we have to do to work with people to make sure we're going to have a good healthcare system within the state. On one area in the Attorney General's office that I know they do a lot of work on is Medicaid and Medicare fraud. That is one of the fastest growing issues, and they've actually increased the number of people addressing that because, of course, as you as Patrick mentioned earlier, with that huge growth in money, you also have a huge growth in people, trying to commit fraud and get a hold of that money. And so Medicare and Medicaid fraud, whether it's 60 Minutes focusing on it, or all the different groups that are trying to focus on it, or taking advantage of seniors, there's a lot of that going on that we are trying to address in the state that will help get those healthcare costs down too.
Great. Thank you, and thank you for your question. And I think you have a question here.
Hi, my name is Annabelle Fisher. I have a question about voter registration. Last month, my wallet was stolen. My identity was stolen. I have no identity. So when I went to vote absentee because I couldn't vote that day, I found out that I had to give my Social Security number. Needless to say, I was a bit paranoid. I had no identity, and I'm on the Federal Trade Commission identity list, what have you. So I was told if I wouldn't allow them to put my Social Security number into the computer, or say, if you don't do it and you don't want us to have your Social Security number, you cannot vote. So I don't know if my suggestion, this is true. So I think when you register to vote here in Virginia, you have to give your Social Security number. No. My suggestion I would like to make is, because you've changed the driver's licenses now, where you don't no longer have to give your Social Security number. And yes, I'm still a little bit, I'm not giving out any more information than I have to now. But I would like to suggest for you all to do something down in Richmond, so when people go to vote absentee, that they do not have to give their Social Security number, but can give the number on your driver's license. Because that's all I had for about a month, was walking around with my number on my driver's license and no identity. Thank you.
Somebody want to take that? Somebody take it?
Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think that's actually... No, I don't think that's accurate. I mean, under the Voting Rights Act, there's only certain things for which you can be denied a voter registration upon. And to vote, first of all, you should have been able to cast a provisional ballot at worst. But at best, you're not even required to show a driver's license. You can actually sign an affidavit of affirmation of identity, and that should suffice. But I will tell you, that one of the things we need to be vigilant about is that there is a new, shall we say, hypervigilance about technicalities amongst the Electoral Board, because we had a change in party control. And the technicalities are being highlighted a bit more than they used to be for certain reasons. And we're seeing that. We're also seeing more legislation being introduced in Richmond to try and create more technicalities and hurdles to voting. And one of the ones we saw this last session in the House was somebody tried to put a bill in that required you to have to show a driver's license to vote, no exceptions. And that becomes a real issue for a lot of people that don't have driver's licenses. Maybe their license got suspended, maybe they lost it, and or maybe they're blind and don't need one. Or I remember we had an interesting debate where we talked about how easy it is to get a license, and Jennifer McClellan pointed out that if you're African American as of a certain age, you weren't allowed to be born in a hospital in Virginia. You didn't have a birth certificate. You never had one. And there's not a lot of awareness about a lot of these issues, and a lot of people think it's very easy to get these papers and documents and things, and it's not always easy. So, but next time that happens, call your local committee, and they will get a lawyer on it and get you in the door. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Question?
I have a question with regards to redistricting. What are the possibilities or the chances of removing redistricting from the hands of those who stand to benefit from it, namely the legislators themselves? Could we have an impartial, nonpartisan group of demographers do the redistricting in our state?
Yeah, I'll take that one as I think the only person here, one of only two members of the House who I think has ever voted in favor of nonpartisan redistricting reform. I've had the opportunity to sit for a few years on the elections subcommittee, and what would happen is we'd have redistricting reform bills come into the subcommittee or come to us, be introduced to the subcommittee, or come to us from the Senate, because the Senate's actually passed this. And the partisan makeup of the subcommittee was such that there were two Democrats, and we were the only two votes in favor of those bills every time. And unfortunately, what has happened is, when, at least on the House side, when Republicans were in the minority, they supported this issue, and Democrats killed it. And now that Republicans are in the majority, Democrats have supported the issue, and Republicans keep killing it. It's a huge problem, and the truth is, I don't have any good news for you. Governor McDonnell, when he had an election year conversion on this issue and decided when he was running that he would say that he supported this, but when the Senate version of the bill came over to the House and was in the subcommittee, nobody from the governor's office was even there to stand up and say the governor supports this bill. So, you take that for what it's worth, but the plain truth is this go around, it's going to be the typical partisan process, and because of the split control, what's likely going to happen is Democrats will draw the Senate seats and Republicans will draw the House seats. So that's unfortunately just how we have it this go around. But looking on the bright side, we know now we've got 10 years to keep working on the issue to try and change it for the next census. And I would encourage everyone to be as vocal as they can with both parties in favor of it. And I will say even within our Democratic caucus, us newer members, which I think I'm looking at who's still here, and on the Democratic side, it's all of us are newer members of the kind of younger generation who's come in the last few years, and we've consistently supported it. And I like to remind folks that the real test of principle will be if and when someday we're in the majority, will we continue to support it? And I will go on the record every time saying that when someday I am in the majority, I will support it, and I suspect that these folks will too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Go ahead. Sure.
Just wanted to add that Democrats are a majority in the Senate, and we've passed it for the last, I think, 2 or 3 years. And I've consistently supported it, and I'm hopeful that we're going to continue the push, recognize that it may be too late for this time around, but I hope not, and we'll keep trying.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Jerome?